Hi there. Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks is an exciting new digital opportunity to obtain mentoring to help you improve your modeling. You will meet talented modelers and manufacturers from all over the world who share their model building skills and artistic advice. Improve your modeling and increase the confidence in your modeling efforts. Share your building efforts with fellow modelers and have some fun doing it. The shows are live on Zoom and YouTube, so be sure to join in and ask your questions. Now here is New Tracks founder and your host, Jim Kello, NMRA.
Welcome this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate you attending our shows. Hope you'll come back often and tell your friends about us. Before we start the show, I want to introduce Father Ron Walters for the prayer for the show. Father Walters.
Almighty God, just as our models imitate the beauty of your creation, may we imitate your kindness and generosity to us in our relationship with others. Bless us now and always. Amen.
Thank you so much, Father. We appreciate all that you do for our show, including the showing us the modeling that you do. And now I want to introduce the video by Dennis Brennan for Brennan's Model Railroading, who is the sponsor for our show.
For over 25 years, Brennan's Model Railroading has been offering unique products for the O-scale market. Our flagship product, Brennan's Better Ballast, was an instant hit and continues to be the industry leader. Its prototypical size and natural color blend of real crushed granite make it the choice for discerning modelers. Since then, we've developed a complementary line of natural ground cover materials. Additionally, we offer craftsman kits that anyone can build with complete photographically illustrated instructions that assume you've never done this before. The Sonky Wanky Coffee Company is the latest and the fourth kit to be added to our ongoing and highly popular limited edition Ellison Tribute series. These kits take Ellison's scratch-built iconic structures to a new level with Dennis' spin. The idea being that if Frank were alive today, this is how we would build these models using modern methods and materials. Use the QR code to visit our website.
I'm very proud to have Dennis be a sponsor for our show. I really do appreciate his support. Now I want to turn to Chris Course, who is the host for the My Build segment that we do once a month. And it's starting to gain in popularity very well. I'm very pleased about it. I mean, we're getting more people and newer people, and the more that we can do, the better. So, Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Jim. We'll start off here. The next My Build is in February, of course. It is February 21st. And the challenge is oddities. Show us your weird things. Everybody's got them. It's just a matter of where you hit it on your layout or things you've been thinking about placing on your layout somewhere. Things such as aliens, like a UFO dealership, steampunk, jackalopes, non-prototypical trains, depressed center flat cars with strange loads on them, that sort of thing. We'd like to see them. We've got some good entries so far, and we'd like to see exactly how weird we can make this. So it's all up to you guys. So please send me your photos to railrunner130@hotmail.com. And if you could, please have them to me by the 18th. That way I can get them in order and give them the proper treatment. Also, while we're at it, I wanted to thank everybody that showed up at Amherst last weekend. It was a record crowd. I just saw the number. It's like 26,000 people were there. That's phenomenal for that show. People want to say that the hobby is dying. This is evidence that it's absolutely not. So it was a great opportunity to meet a lot of people, customers new and old, as well as other vendors. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and I was so glad to see everybody, and I think everybody had a good time. So I'll turn it back over to you, Jim.
Thank you, Chris. And I've heard that from at least 3 other people now about the Amherst show. So congratulations to John and his staff for putting on what must have been one of the real outstanding Amherst shows that they've ever had, because I heard this was a record crowd and very enthusiastic both days. I mean, it didn't, there wasn't a slack off afternoon, Sunday or anything like that. I mean, people were there, they were excited, and they were buying. So congratulations to the Amherst group. Well, with that said, now I want to start the show because we've got a full show tonight. Let me start with the first segment, which is G-scale modeling. The sponsor of it is Alan Rogers, his company, his new creations, Victoria Railroad Building, LLC. Alan, I appreciate this so much.
Welcome to New Creations Victorian Railroad Buildings, located in Bakersfield, California, 1 hour from the famed Tehachapi Loop. As part of building his model railroad layout, Alan Rogers took photos and made scale drawings of a number of buildings in the Southwest, many of which no longer exist. New Creations Victorian Railroad Buildings has turned these photos and drawings into kits with laser-cut wood, 3D printed components and detailed instructions. We produce kits in HO, O, S, N and G scales. Our O scale kits are compatible with Holiday Village dioramas. You can see our products at train shows or use the QR code to visit our website. We hope you will try our unique kits. They are easy and fun to build, even for beginners. You will enjoy the finished models for many years to come.
Thanks again, Alan, for your support. Now I want to turn this over to the host for G-scale modeling, Steve Bittinger. Steve, welcome. Pat, is Steve not with us this evening?
I don't see him.
I think we're missing a Steve.
Okay. I don't know what happened there. Anyway, let me move on to number 2, which is S-scale modeling. And the video, the sponsor for this is the National Association of S-Gauge.
S-scale or S-gauge is modeling in 1/64th scale and includes American Flyer, standard gauge, and narrow gauge. S-gauge, or 3/16 inch to the foot modeling, is often called the Goldilocks scale, an ideal combination of detail and scalability to model reasonable-sized areas. This combination makes S-scale both versatile and easy to work with. Ready-to-operate locomotives and rolling stock are available from a variety of vendors. There are also manufacturers of equipment, buildings, track, and details in kit form available for those who love to build. S-scale is the ideal scratch building scale, large enough for amazing detail, yet small enough for a layout. To learn more, visit the website of the National Association of S-Gaugers at nasg.org, where you will find the history of the scale, information about S-scale clubs in your area, current manufacturers, online groups, and resources to help you on your journey into the wonderful world of 1/64 scale model railroading.
And our host for S-scale modeling is Tim Hubner. Tim, welcome. Tim is not here either.
I don't see him either.
I should be on here. You guys hear me?
Where's Tim?
Yeah.
I'm
There
on
he
here.
is.
Oh, there you go. Hi,
Okay.
guys. I'm
Tim.
happy to be on. Our
Thanks.
schedule is finally aligned.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So, S-scale. I was going along with your suggestion, Jim. I was reaching out a lot here recently to the farm equipment modelers, and I had a lot of people reach out to me and engage about, adding trains to their scenes and, what is available product wise. So kind of going along with that and some of the feedback I got from the first show, because on the first show I had primarily brass models. I was kind of thinking about, how would the typical person get into S scale, right? In front of me, I have an Overland Models S scale RS11. Wonderful model. I also knew, and this is one of the great things about it, I knew that American Models had produced one at a significantly less cost. So I went ahead and procured one of the American Models RS11s, and I thought this would be a great way to kind of show people that you can enter S scale without having to spend a fortune up front, especially for the farm modelers and the equipment modelers, etc. If they want to add trains to their, and especially right now, because it seems like one of the groups I was following has 12,000 members. So I mean, there's a huge potential there for introducing more people to S scale model railroading. So I went ahead and I procured one of the American Models RS11s, and I wanted to go over it a little bit with you guys and kind of do a shout out, because American Models, they've been around since the mid 1990s. Now they have an 8,500 square foot place out in Michigan, if I remember correctly, and they produce everything in house. It's all American made, so all your money stays here too, which is always a huge plus for me. And I was really impressed by this particular model. So opening up, the first thing you'll notice is it comes with a set of KD couplers. This is something, I believe they're the KD 812s, if I remember correctly. But this is something that I was really impressed with because I did not know they included KD couplers with it. I thought they'd included no couplers. So this is a really nice little addition. Then, of course, they come with your typical limited warranty and, basic information on care and maintenance of the locomotive. And then in between this two-piece foam clamshell, which I must say, even though I seen the box originally and I was like, man, that thing's going to get beat up in shipping when I seen it. Because I mean, it's just a traditional cardboard box. I opened it up and I was really surprised to see just how well they packaged these models. Let's get this thing out of here real quick. So the first thing you'll notice is along the side of the units, they did foam inserts to help protect the handrails, which is something I always appreciate, especially with the injection molded handrails. They have a tendency, like in my smaller scale models, my HO scale models that I have, they have a tendency to deform if they're not properly supported. And they did a really good job on maintaining that and just making sure that when the model arrives to the customer, it's in the best possible condition it can be. The rest of it is kind of up to UPS, and they seem to be playing football with models here recently. So if we can give it a good chance of arriving to you in one piece, that's definitely a plus. I also think the RS11 was a great model to bring on here too, just because it was it was so ubiquitous for such a long period of time. Alco, American Locomotive Company, started producing these in 1956 to 1961. They produced a total, let's see if I'm correct here, of 327 units for the southern or the lower 48, with an additional 19 units produced for Canada via the Alco subsidiary, the Montreal Locomotive Works. So this was an engine that not only with the dozen original railroads that purchased it, but it was, various short lines, class twos, etc. It was used for many years. So it'd be applicable for a variety of eras. The first thing I noticed when I pulled this model out of the packaging was the paint. The painting lettering on it are really well done. There's no voids anywhere on the shell. All of the heralds and everything else on the end are perfectly clear and legible. I was also impressed by the level of detail on this thing. So as you can see here on the front, there's separately applied scale grab irons, 2 rows, an additional grab iron ladder here in the corner, as is typical for RS11s, and full grab irons on the rear as well. I was also impressed by the fact that they included MU hoses, coupler cut bars, and the handrails are really well done. I don't know if you can tell from there, but this is the only plastic model I've received, well, probably in 20 years, that have had perfectly straight handrails. Like, that's something that drives me nuts, particularly in photos, is those wavy and just generally nasty looking handrails. In this particular case, it's very well done. So when I got it, I initially put it on the test track and kind of played with it for a little bit there. The drive is really similar to the traditional Athearn drive in HO scale. So I was kind of expecting Athearn-like performance, and I was actually pleasantly surprised. to find that it runs much, much quieter than the traditional after drive. Of course, it has dual lighted headlights, and I believe my initial starting speed on this thing was surprisingly slow as well. Oh, one more thing I want to break up first is if you're considering S-scale, especially if you're coming from farm modeling or heavy equipment modeling, one of the things to keep in mind is what you want your train to run on. So in S-scale, we have high rail and we have scale models. High rails, of course, is a traditional American flyer. So the high rail track, deeper flanges, American Flyer is a great example of that. I know Lionel and MTH, I think MTH sold all their S-scale to S-Helper service, or I'm sorry, scale trains, but you'll find a lot of that on the secondhand market. So when you're shopping around, you have to decide whether or not you want to do a high rail, which is more of a traditional toy train, or if you want to do a scale model. I model in S-scale, so this is a scale model with the much smaller wheel flanges. But I was surprised when I set it on the track. Initially, it started at about 3 scale miles per hour, which is really good. Like I build a lot of switching layouts. So like low speed performance for me is huge. And I ran it for a little bit longer, kind of a break-in, and I did it on hand laid code 70. And I was surprised to see that the initial starting speed actually dropped to under 2 scale miles per hour. And it has plenty of drawbar pull. So you can pull, a typical, let's say, train of scale trains, 2 bay hoppers. You can pull about 15 or 20 of those on straight and level track. So depending on your space and needs, you can pull quite a bit of equipment with it. Going back to the model, I was pleasantly surprised to see that dimensionally it's nearly exact as compared to the prototype. So it's just over 56 feet long, 56 scale feet long, height, width, etc., all matched. So I was quite happy with that. The tooling on this, having seen several other American Models products, I'm really especially happy with any of the tooling done on the hoods. So all of the hinges, latches, et cetera, on the doors are all accurately rendered. The fan hatches, the dynamic brake hatch, separate horn castings, everything just really, really well done. It definitely in any way, shape, or form doesn't tell me toy train, which is something I especially appreciate. So I spent a little bit of time with it, opened the shell up, seen how easy it was to install DCC in it. It doesn't have a pin yet, but it's a relatively simple installation if you were to go that direction. So really easy to add DCC, really easy to add lighting, and it rides on a pair of AAR type B trucks, which are appropriate for the model. And the trucks too were also something I was really, really surprised with. They're very well done. They have, most of the detail in it is molded into the truck side frame, but they did a really good job, specifically with your brake cylinders, etc., producing a nice 3-dimensional look on it. The more time I've kind of spent with it, the more I've actually been impressed. I've compared it to prototype drawings, and it seems to primarily represent a phase 1 or early production RS-11, built between 1956 and 1957. And the shell is accurate in almost every way. The only thing I found that was slightly off that I hadn't noticed on any other models is the dynamic brake fence up top. There should be a series of 3 and then 2. This one, for some reason, has 3 and then 3. I haven't located a prototype that has that particular configuration, but that was the only thing I found on the model thus far that doesn't accurately match to the prototype. Fuel tank, of course, is kind of a mid-sized tank. I believe it represents an 8,000 gallon tank with separate, man, I'm starting to learn English for the first time or something here, separate air tanks on it, etc. All in all, for the price, and this one came in at about 2.5. So, I mean, very, very reasonable when you compare it to a lot of what's available, even on the secondhand brass market. And I think the quality is, second to none. And, the fact that they're a United States-based company, and I think they have 5 employees at this point. So they're a small operation, and they just do an exceptional job on it. In addition to the RS-11, they have a 484 Northern, which is all die cast from my understanding, as well as over a dozen different diesels. Many of those would be applicable from all eras, 1956 up. So regardless of what you model, if you've got a little let's say you're a farm equipment modeler and you want to install a short line with like a grain silo and, just have a locomotive switching a couple covered hoppers back and forth. They have a lot of variety for us. And if this is any indication of the quality that American Models produces, I'm impressed. This is definitely one of those things that when I opened the box, I was a little bit surprised on it. Kind of going along with starting in S-Scale too, I'm going to start putting a little bit more information up so that way you guys can locate my pages. You can also locate any relative information on that too. I'll probably do that, Jim, when the video is posted on YouTube. I'll comment in the bottom or something, or maybe me and you can work out some way of sharing my contact information. So that way, if you're just kind of dabbling and you want to try S-Scale, I can help, along with several other people I know. We can help point you in the right direction so that way you can get started, and you can do so on a budget. Brass is fantastic. I still love it, but it's not the way I'd recommend starting an S-Scale, honestly. The other thing I purchased this week, or received this week anyways, is I kind of wanted to do a real quick run around this. In S-Scale, we've been waiting for this for a long time. So S-Helper Service used to be a pretty large producer of cars and locomotives in the S-Scale hobby. Unfortunately, they went out of business several years ago. Scale Trains had purchased the tooling for it a couple of years ago. So of course we've been clamoring, and I myself have contacted Scale Trains probably a dozen times begging for F7s. They haven't produced the F7s yet, but I do have, their word that they're going to produce them in the future. But I made a pre-order about a year ago for a few different new cars that they're producing. This one here is a 2-bay fish belly hopper. You can kind of read the box. I'm always excited to see anything produced in S-Scale, even if it's reused tooling or reintroduction. To me, it doesn't really matter. Like, any new S-Scale is just a fantastic thing. So I pre-ordered several cars, not only the 2-bay hoppers, but I did the USRA rebuilt 40-foot box cars. And I was really, really, really happy with these when I got them as well. This is another way to, purchase rolling stock in an affordable way. So this car comes equipped from the factory with the larger American Flyer style high rail wheels and the larger American Flyer style couplers. Included in the box is a set of KD knuckle couplers, as well as some scale wheels. Pull this a little bit closer to the camera here so you guys can see. But initially, just pulling the car out, installing the couplers and wheel sets on it, just a fantastic job. Just an absolutely fantastic job on reproducing these cars. All the grab irons are separate. You can see here on the end, everything's separate. They're all wire parts, so it's not a fragile car to handle either. The stirrup steps down here in the bottom. Ooh, a little bit too close. And then I'm going to roll it onto the floor. Let's not do that. I did that earlier, by the way. That hurt. Thank God I have carpet. But any of the grab irons are all wire. The stirrup steps are really, really nicely made, nice and thin. I mounted the KD couplers using the factory spacer, and they spec out perfectly to KD's height gauge. In particular, I was impressed, and I don't know how well you guys can see it here, but I was impressed with any of the brake detailing here in the back. All separate hoses, brake cylinder, et cetera, et cetera. It's just overall really, really nice car. Paint and lettering, fantastic. There's no voids. All the lettering, no matter how small it is legible even under magnification. Weight on this car sits just a little bit under National Model Railroad Association recommended practices. Unfortunately, when I was weighing it, I forgot to get the weight documented for here. But, being that it's an open hopper, there's a lot of different ways that you can add weight to it if you want. You could do a coal load or, what have you inside with the additional weight to bring it up to spec. I ran it on my test track for a little bit after double checking the gauge on the wheels. Oh, that's one thing I'll point out. On these cars, installing the wheel sets sit on a small knurled section of the axle. So when you're installing them, if you press too hard on one side or the other, you can throw the wheel sets out of gauge. I figured out a way to install them so that way they're in gauge every time, but the first couple of wheel sets that I installed on some of my cars, I ended up throwing the gauge way out. So it's definitely recommended that you at least take a peek at it. National Mall Railroad standard gauge would be a great way to do it, just to check your back-to-back spacing on your wheel sets. It'll help prevent some operational issues down the road. But it's a lovely little model. I'm really excited to start kind of dabbling in this aspect of the hobby too. I'm primarily a brass collector, or G-scale. I do a lot of G-scale modeling too, just because I like the size and mass. But having come over here from O-scale Proto 48, I've been thoroughly impressed with the products that are available. I've been doing this about 2 years now in S-scale. And, it's the first time I've ever found a scale where it feels right. Like the Goldilocks scale is the perfect way of describing it. But I'm going to start experimenting, purchasing more stuff in the future, especially with the mindset of showing, farm modelers, people in other scales that want to, considering trying S scale, especially if you want just the mass and, detail level of O scale without the real estate eating, disadvantages of O scale. You can, SM3, you can basically build in an HO scale footprint. S scale standard gauge, not much larger. So, if you have a home layout and you only have, let's say, a 2x12 or a 2x14 or what have you, like a single wall, it just gives you a fantastic level of detail. And especially with products like this American Models unit, you also get great operational characteristics. So you can really kind of, have the best of both worlds. What is that saying that you say? Best of both worlds?
Tim,
Yes, sir.
I hate to say this, but your time's up.
Perfect. I was running out of things to say anyways.
Well, I appreciate so much you being here tonight and showing us the models and making the comments that you have made about them. I think that's great, and I really do appreciate it. And we'll look forward to your next presentation.
Absolutely. I'll see you guys then.
Can I ask a quick question before you go?
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, curious about the price points of the RS11 Dakar being an HO modeler. I'm just kind of wondering, you're talking about affordability and such, not brass, but what kind of pricing are we looking at, please?
This particular model here, I bought, I think it was $259. Shipping was around $10, so really, really reasonable on shipping. It seems like most of the American Models units sit in that mid 200s range, but if you buy 2 units, they give you a discount of like 40 or $50 too. As for the cars, you typically be looking, I think I pre-ordered these at like $54 a piece. If you look on the secondhand market though, particularly like the original run of the S Helper service cars, I've been buying them on eBay and various other places for as low as $20 a car. So pretty comparable to HO.
Anybody else have any questions? Tim, thanks again so much. I really do appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you next time.
Appreciate you, Jim. I'll see you next time.
Yes, sir. Well, I understand that Steve Bittinger is here, and I'd like to go back and have Steve talk to us about G-scale modeling. So, Steve, welcome.
It's Steve Sherrill here with Steve Bittinger, and we are going to present the G-scale show tonight. You will see, you're going to see what we're going to talk about tonight. Steve layout is part indoor and part outdoor, which is kind of unique. It's a very high quality layout. Tonight, talk to you about some of the things that he does in G-scale here. What you're looking at is,
yeah, we're not hearing you at all.
I'm unmuted.
I can hear you occasionally, but I don't know whether you're breaking up or just not talking.
Well, we may be breaking up.
I can hear.
Okay.
Can you hear us now?
I can hear you fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
No problem.
This is Steve Bittinger on the camera. All right. Steve, you want to give us a little bit of your background? You model Western Maryland. Is there some reason why you model Western Maryland?
So, yeah, good evening, everybody. I'm sure most of you don't have a clue who I am. Anyway, so I grew up in a railroading family. I tell people I was literally born between the rails. My mom was pregnant with me when she was employed as a freight clerk on the Western Maryland. She took time off and delivered me and went right back to work. And I ended up being babysit by the chief freight agent's wife for the Western Maryland up until the time I was about 5 years old. When I was 5, we bought a farm directly on the Western Maryland right away on what's called the Lurgan subdivision. We had about 1,000 feet of frontage on the railroad, and my bedroom window on the second floor of the old farmhouse looked right out at the railroad. So I got to see the transition from steam right into diesel. We lived there up until 1962. Thereafter, we sold that property, moved closer to town, and the railroad ended up being behind us. So we always had the railroad. My mother was employed with the Western Maryland for 35 years. She was one of only 2 women ever to become a freight agent for the Western Maryland Railroad. Of all the thousands of people that worked there, that was a very unusual career at that time. I myself actually got a job on the Western Maryland. When I was 19 years old, I became a car inspector at Lincoln Yards in York, Pennsylvania. And I decided I didn't like being a car inspector very much. First of all, I didn't like working alone out in the yards. It's pretty dangerous. And secondly, I decided maybe my parents are right. I need to go get a college education. So I headed off to school at that point. And from that point on, I've always been a model railroader from a long time back. And I started off with an American Flyer S gauge. And tonight you're looking at a burro crane that I built here not too long ago, scratch built. And the story behind the burro crane is this. When I was a little kid, my cousin had Lionel cranes. And one of the neatest things he had was this burro crane, self-propelled. He could pull a few cars. And I always thought, hey, I wish I could have one of those. And maybe American Flyer will make one eventually, but they never did. And later on, I transitioned into S scale, still no burro crane. Then along about 1985, I got involved with G scale, large scale. And I thought, okay, maybe now one of these manufacturers will make a burro crane. So wishful thinking meant that almost, close to 40 years later, no burro crane. So I concluded the only way I was going to get one was to build it myself. So that's what we're seeing here this evening.
Steve, how'd you get into G scale? What made you decide to go G scale?
I belong to the South Mountain Division, NMRA, and they're a group of us of all gauges. And I ran into Steve Sherrill, of all people, and another fellow, Dean Lowry, and they were all excited about G scale. So the 3 of us kind of ventured into this together. And I thought this is the neatest thing. So I proceeded to build an outdoor layout, learned a lot in that. And we all learned a lot that the big downfall was cleaning track. So I thought, man, we got to get out of this. So we went to a show in Cincinnati, Ohio, big G scale show. And here were fellows with battery powered trains. And I thought, this is the way to go. So I came right back home, tore down that layout, and started all over. So the layout that you see here today, this is my 3rd one that I've built. It was a learning curve along the way. So everything I have now is battery powered. I model what I know. I told you I was a car inspector in the late 60s, 67 and 68. So I thought I'll just model Western Maryland, create a fictitious branch line of the Western Maryland running from about Grafton, West Virginia towards Elkins. And I can use all this early diesels and this type of scenery that I like, the rugged West Virginia scenery. And that's what my model is going to be.
Steve, you did the burro crane, you scratch built that. Do you want to show us a little bit about the burro crane?
Sure.
You also did a lot of research into construction, contacting the burro company and using their historical data to make a pretty authentic model. So if you explain a little bit to us.
Sure. I've built quite a few scratch built models over the years. So what I generally do is try to go out and find the real thing. And I was fortunate that a company called Ozark Rail Equipment Company out on the West Coast had a burro crane for sale. And in their listing, they had lots and lots of photos. It was an excellent source. In fact, I can show you one of those. I guess we can get this on camera. But this was one of their photos. And I had like 40 more of these, including the underbelly, everything you needed. Also, I had an old shell of a Lionel burro crane just for reference. And I converted all the measurements to 1/2-inch scale. And I generally start my projects by collecting surplus materials, I guess I'll call it, that I can use to build these things. So the first thing I got a hold of was a power block. The power blocks, motor blocks, look a lot like these things right here. That was going to be one of the first things I needed, probably one of the most expensive parts of building it. I'm in the contracting business, general contracting and home building business, and we have a lot of scrap materials left over. So this is PVC that we use for trims and moldings. I save all the scraps. This happens to be a heavier thickness, and this one a little bit thinner. And if we were looking at that burro crane, the back wall in the crane is this piece. The upper portions of it is like this. And then the rest of that is styrene, standard styrene, along with evergreen plastics for some of the trims and moldings. The power for it, it's battery powered. And believe it or not, I managed to get this battery inside there standing up in that position, just like that. It just barely fit. And that's a pretty big battery for a little guy like that. This is 11.1 volts, 2,500 milliamps. And Steve introduced me to MRC's controllers. This is a throttle that they offer and a receiver, which is in the unit, and it comes with sound, which is real handy at a very reasonable price. I think these things now are like $80 delivered. So not much you can get for $80 with all of that. The rest of it, the boom that you see on here, that's a boom off of an old Tonka truck that I turned into an appropriate boom. Let's go turn off the light here for a second. Is it going to go? It's not. Yes, it is.
Here you can see the size of this. G scale is not small.
Now, if we put the scale on it, this thing's like 7.5 inches long, the body, about 4.5 inches for the cab. A lot of G scale stuff's around 4 inches in width, plus the motor block here at the bottom. The rest of the little components that you see on here, I just scratch build all this stuff in my workshop out of my usual pile of junk that I have. And Steve was looking at the cabling here one day, and that's nothing more than the cord out of a chalk line, carpenter's chalk line box that I stained black and put on there. And the plastic for in the windows is the cover off a box of donuts. I saved the cover and made that out of that. And then the rest of it, painting, KD couplers, and detail parts that I put on there to make that. So,
and where'd you get the boom, Steve?
That's what this is from the Tonka truck. It was broken and damaged. It was on eBay for like $12, the whole thing. I just chopped it up and rebuilt the boom the way I needed it.
Did you when you got the data for the model, how did you lay that out? How did you start when you start scratch building these large size models?
When you get started on these things, so you're going to go to the location where the prototype is if you can. And I'm working on a locomotive right now. We just got done up in Hagerstown, Maryland, with a locomotive that we measured and photographed and everything, and it's underway. But it's just a matter of mathematical conversion. Most G scale stuff that is on my railroad is 1/29th because most of the major manufacturers are in the 1/29th range. But I tend to like, it's easier to build, to be honest with you, at about 1/24th or 1/25th. There's just more items out there in the world that are either junk items you can recycle or that you can buy in and not have to make them. There's a few things you can buy. You don't have to make it. G scale is not builder friendly compared to the other scales. They're just nowhere near the components and parts. You just got to be creative and make up your own for those. The real company Burrow has lots of literature. Burrow was built by a company called Collin Freestadt. They were in Chicago, Illinois, and they built Burrow cranes for a long, long time. Hundreds of railroads had Burrow cranes. They were really a popular item. This particular one is called Burrow Model 40, one of their most popular models. They made that for, I don't know, probably 2 decades that particular crane was available.
Steve, when you build some of these models, and especially the Burrow crane, you showed me this, you came up with something by complete accident to turn it on.
Yes.
You want to show that? And sometimes this happens when you're in the scratch building, you know, things just come about.
All battery items have to get charged at some point, and they run down, so you got to have a position to have a battery charger and on and off switch. So in between the base and the frame, there's a toggle switch in here and a charging port. So the first time I was going to turn this thing on, to get to it, I rotated this around, and by accident I hit the switch under here and it turned it on. So I thought, let me take it back the other way. So I took it back the other way, and the light just went out and it turned it off. And I thought, well, this is a great system. This is an accidental system, but no trying to get your fingers in there or putting a little stick in there or whatever it is to turn it on and off. Just rotate it one way or the other, and it's going to work.
Completely by accident that happened. That was eliminated a future problem.
Right.
Yes, that's very. You find that your building experience and land development has really helped you in creating multiple uses for things that you see as far as on your railroad, you know?
I would say that a couple of things has really added up to being able to go in the direction I did. Number one, growing up in a railroad family and understanding real railroading. Number two is my education. I'm a geologist by profession, so I have a pretty good eye for rock formations, structures, and so forth. And it drives me crazy when I see people do things that I know are nowhere near reality. They're just stuck it up there without much thought to what they were doing. That's two. Number three, what Steve's talking about, yes, because I have to work with drawings for homes and houses and buildings. When I do development work, we do everything. I buy the land, we build the roads, we build the streets, we do the utility lines, lay out the houses, build the houses, everything 100% in-house. So some of that is civil engineering, some of that is structural stuff, and all of that put together really is a good set of skills for that. My weakest skill is running a computer, for one. I always had somebody that did that for me. And number two, I've struggled, but have managed to solve the mystery of electronics. And I'm slowly getting comfortable. But every time I figure something out, somebody comes up with new electronics, and you got to start all over.
Now you operate your railroad. You have a regular operating sessions. About how many times and what, you know, is it during the summer probably? How many people have operated your railroad so far?
Just by chance, this week I do an annual report each year at the end of the year as to what we did, and I just put it out this week, so it's fresh in my mind. So we have 4 a year typically. We start in April, and the last one this year was at Halloween. We have anywhere from 8 to 16 operators at a given day. Last year, we had a total of 38 operators participate in our operating sessions. Over the years, we've had people come from everywhere. My furthest away operators came from Perth, Australia, to help operate. So it's been really nice to share with others. We've got some really knowledgeable operators. Everybody is quite good, actually. Everything from dispatchers, yard masters, down to crews, conductors. And because of the size of the railroad, I have about 400 square feet where we see me here tonight indoors. We have 1,400 square feet outside. And we can't go out there now. It's nighttime, it's dark, and it's winter. So you just have to see a little bit of the inside. But it's been a great pleasure to share it with other people. And I think the fact that so many of them come back and are repeat people, I think they enjoy it as well. And we also let people bring their equipment here with us.
Now,
Steve, I hate to do this, but you're out of time tonight, so we'll have to wait to hear from you some more next time.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being here. And Steve, Sherrill, thank you so much for the interview. We appreciate both of you.
Okay.
Thanks so much. See you.
You're welcome.
Now I want to turn to Tom Farrell for his build along of the Frenchman River Model Works kit. So Tom, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you again for having me. This evening I have part 3 of the Frenchman River Model Works industry, if we're going to refer to it as an industry. The parts 1 and 2 were the Lobster boat, and the final part here is the actual Lobster shack. And I'll show you how and where it went on my layout here. This is how the Lobster shack is delivered. It's a resin kit. There's really nothing kit about it. It comes assembled, ready to go. You just need to paint it, basically. As I said before, the art and the challenge of these resin kits is in the finishing of them. And like all things from Frenchman River, this is just superbly detailed and very high quality with minimal flashing. Every single shake you can see on the roof there that's in focus. Every shake shows off the wood grain and detail, and it's just impeccable. And this is shown about 4 times its size. There's just a tiny bit of flash that took just seconds to remove with a fine file. Otherwise, it was ready to go. Before I primed the model, I cleaned it with a dish detergent and a toothbrush. These resin models typically have a mold release on them. You don't want to paint over the mold release or your paint could flake off or chip. I sprayed the shack with this Tamiya surface primer. It's a very light primer that does not fill in any of the detail. It's a very fine primer, and I've talked about this primer before. I recommend it for all things that you don't want to hide any detail. And you do want to prime these models. It gives you a nice non-reflective surface. It gives the actual paint something to stick to. There it is primed, and you can see we really haven't lost any of the detail. If you look back to the roof there, you can still see all the graining and whatnot. This was the starting of the paint. I used a combination of this gel stain, a walnut, this brown, and this white. I had to play with this quite a bit to this is still a base coat here. I'm often challenged making plastic and resin look like wood, but it just takes me a while. That's why I like to work with wood. But resin's nice because it gives you all this nice detail. So there's the thing developing along. I highlighted it with a white dry brush. I did not take photos post this, but I trimmed this out with a green paint, just an acrylic paint. And you'll see in the finished model, I apologize, I was rushed and I got so engrossed in painting this thing, trying to make it look right, that I forgot to take photos. I kit bash this, so I put in a floor and some joists. I was originally going to mount this on a mountainside. So I did go through the motions of putting this platform on a mountain. And then I decided, now I better make this put it next to the lobster boat in my harbor. So this is a shack that I created for the mountain. It's nothing to do with tonight's presentation, but I did put another shack up there on the mountain. So I had to build another platform, another floor, which is nothing more than, in this case, this is a piece of plywood that I sketched I put the shack on the piece of plywood, then I ran a pencil around the perimeter, and then I cut it out with my saw. And these are 2x8s, same drill as before. I glued them on. I almost made the mistake of putting this floor on before putting in the acetate windows. So I just cut some raw pieces of acetate, and with canopy glue, I just, with basically a Q-tip, I put this canopy glue around the outside of the windows openings, and just laid this acetate on there. If any of the glue would move on to the acetate, you wouldn't see it, because as we discussed before, this stuff dries clear and comes from the model aircraft hobby, hence the name canopy. So I glued the floor on. You don't see this, so even though this is sloppily done, I mean, this is on the bottom of the model. Then I put these, basically these 4x4 bases all across every other joist. I put them on. Now Jim keeps telling me that this is a it's an industry, and he kept saying this through 1 and 2. So I've called this Jim's Seafood, fresh 7 p.m. every Wednesday.
Oh, that's great.
And here's the final sign, a little out of focus, but I put a couple lights on there. And in a moment, you'll see the menu. This is where it's going on my layout. This is a Frenchman River fishing boat, and there's the lobster boat behind it. So, and there's the finished model. We'll get closer and closer to this. You'll see the menu and the sophisticated customers that Jim draws at his seafood shack. So there's the Frenchman River lobster boat, parts 1 and 2. And there's the seafood shack. Getting closer and closer, there's the menu. You'll see up close in a moment. There's the high-end clientele he draws. And there's his customer. And here's the menu for Jim. Scratch build your seafood feast. New tracks, 1 lobster, $1. A build along, 2 lobsters, $1.75. The caboose, 3 lobsters, $2.50. And of course, the high end, the rustic buff, 4 lobsters, $3.25. Little levity this evening.
I love it. I love it. And
there's his high end customer. Really a classy fellow, this guy. There's the green paint that I was talking about, the final finish there. I put up some railings and decking, and there's the model as it sits. This is the sign with a little fence here. And remember, it's fresh every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Jim's Seafood. That's all I have for you this evening, and thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Tom? Tom, thanks so much for name, and thanks so much for the menu. Fantastic modeling, and I really appreciate you doing this. I think Frenchman River is a really up and coming company. I see they're coming out with a new one of Tom York's kits pretty soon, and I've seen the photo of the model, and to me, it's something really different and unusual. So I wish him the best of luck with it.
Yeah, before I go, I want to thank Frenchman River Model Works, James and Anna Cleveland, for donating the 2 models to the build along. And as Jim said, they carry the Tom York resin kits. And as everybody knows, I consider Tom York somebody really unique within our hobby. So if you can, go on that website and check them out, FrenchRiver.com, and just amazing quality models. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom. Well, now I want to turn to Alfonso for the build along of his SpaceX Dragon. So Alfonso, thank you so much for being here this evening and looking forward to this. I've had a lot of favorable comments from your last presentation.
Nice to know that. Thank you. Good evening, gentlemen. So this is the first of 3 assembly building videos that I have using cardstock to build a Crew Dragon from SpaceX. In this video, I mentioned to you, Jim, that it goes a little more than a 15-minute limit, so I apologize for that. So let me share my screen, and I'm gonna show the video now. All right. Can you see the video now, the image?
No, just you.
Oh.
You're not sharing screen, I don't think.
Let me see, hold on. I apologize. Yeah, I'm gonna start the broadcast, and I should be live now with the video. Let me open it. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna run it, and let's begin.
Okay, we're going to start with the capsule of the Crew Dragon. This is the main piece. I already have cut it. It's a combination using a scissor and an X-Acto knife. Very important to know that all these lines in this gray area have to be cut. All these lines here. And we're also going, because we're going to be using magnets, I'm going to make an indentation in this area. So once it's assembled, I'm going to be putting a magnet right here, because this part will be attached to another magnet on the umbilical arm that it's going to be placed on top of this area. Okay, so before curving the paper, I am going to start making that indentation in this rectangular area. I'm just gonna score. I have this tool, the tip, this is more rounded and this is more pointy. I'm going to just mark the area where I'll be placing the magnet on the back. So I could see it here. I don't know if the camera will allow. Anyway, now I have that area. I'm gonna mark. All right, I'm gonna start curving this. You can use your hands doing it this way. If not, you can make use of the empty roll from a paper towel. Just like that. All right. All right. Next, we're going to start curving all these tabs down here. This is supposed to be curved in order to make this piece, which is the heat shield, to go on top. So let's do that. I have rods. In this case, this would be the way to do it. You really need to have a lot of patience doing this, but at the end you will have a good model. Just try to curve all these tabs. One by one, including the gray area, not the body. All right, so you can see that all these tabs are now curved inwards. All right, so let's start assembling. We're gonna need a connecting tab. This will go here in the back. We can use Elmer glue or a stick glue or a glue stick, but in this case, some Elmer glue. Like so. We're also going to glue this part on this piece, allowing all those triangles to show up. All right, so we're going to be placing some glue here on this edge. Not too much, but with the tip of the bottle I'm using it so I can like brushing the glue, making a thin film of glue in that area. Also, this part can be curved. You can even use your fingers like that. As I say, make sure all the triangles are going to be visible. There. All right. So allow that to dry. In the meantime, we're going to glue what is the heat shield that will cover the bottom of the capsule. I already cut it. So this piece will cover this hole here, and this piece will be glued right there. So let's place a little bit of glue.
Seriously, come here.
You can hold it with your own fingers, or you can make use of a little clamp here. Like that, so, all right. We're gonna apply glue here and put it covering that hole. I like to protect my cutting mat, not making a mess, so that's why I make use of an extra piece of paper that will allow me to press firmly these two parts. I think I can remove this. All right, and I'm gonna press. All right. All right. So now we can continue folding the entire capsule. We're gonna cover it like this, and we're gonna apply glue on this side. All right. We're going to match top and bottom. There's a logo of the X from that has to be matched. Because I have this extra clamp, I'm going to make use of it, allowing me like an extra hand. I'm going to get another clamp. All right, we're getting there. Let it dry a little bit. This is ready. I'm going to remove these clamps now. All right. Now this is the time to put the magnet here in the back. I have magnets. This is a 4 by 2 millimeters in size. Is a neodymium type of magnet. These are very strong. But what I use is a crazy glue to attach them. So now that I have a marking, I can place here, I can see where I make the mark. I'm going to be placing some glue there, right there in the middle. Okay. And sometimes it's tricky to place these magnets, but this is the way. This is my way. So here I have the magnet that I'm going to be putting in the back, And I'm gonna place it here. So this way I'm allowing that the magnet will be firmly glued there. All right, I can remove this now. It's there. So we got that out of the way. Now before gluing the bottom, we need to put a former, which is like it's this part here. I already glue it. This will keep the shape. We're gonna put, now there are two, I'm gonna show you what's the difference when you glue. It's actually this, the former contains two parts. You have to glue it. If you glue it with a regular Elmer's glue, because it's water-based, you're gonna see that it's not perfectly flat. You can see that it's warped. You know, it's moved. You can still use it, but we can make use of glue stick that will prevent the warping. Here I have glue stick. I'm going to apply there. I don't need this.
Oh, Jennifer. Yes.
All right, my time is up. Give me a few more minutes. I'm going to be placing glue in this area. At this level where the gray area starts. So we're going to be putting glue right here. All right. And start setting this disc right there. Try to make it horizontally as possible. You could see this will allow to maintain the shape. All right, and now it's time to start bending these tabs. Just follow the direction of the lines that were cut and start bending them. So each one is going to be covering the next one. This side. Try pushing it down. All right. And let's get this piece ready now. The way we're gonna glue this, the seam line will match the X side. You will need to match this here, okay? So what the intention is to cover all this area. All right, so we're gonna apply glue only here. Now these little these circular areas are going to be curved. You can curve it with you can bend it with your finger like this. We're gonna apply glue right now. Time is running. Just apply glue on the very edge, including those pieces that we already bent. All right. We can also add another magnet here. Let me use the crazy glue. And that is where this magnet will be attached to a similar magnet on the trunk. So let's get this ready. I'm just gonna let it dive there. And with the plastic, I'm going to press it. There. Okay, so it's time to apply. Let's orient ourselves. The seam line where the X is located, and start centering it, and then try covering all the white tabs that are sticking out. With your finger you can push them inwards and try pressing the very edge where you apply the glue. And keep going around the edge, making sure that everything is glued. Well, our time is up now. We're done. So we have covered the bottom portion of the capsule. This is the heat shield. And next chapter will be completing the top, including the nose cone that will have a hinge with the docking mechanism. And we will add the Draco thrusters that will go on each side. There are 4 each side. Right. Thank you for taking your time to watch this video. Thank you.
All right, so that was it.
Great job, Alfonso. I really do appreciate it, but we've got to run. So I'll
Yeah.
see you next week. And thank you so much for doing it. It's going to be a great model. I'm really impressed with how the detail that you've included on it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Until next week. Bye.
Yes, sir. So now we need to turn to Dennis Brennan. Dennis is going to show us the use of his ballast and ballasting track, but he's going to do it kind of in a unique way on a diorama that he's building. So Dennis, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Jim. Hi, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, I thought it's easy enough to show how I do my ballasting, but I think what I'd really rather do is show you how we get there. Okay, and we could do that best by showing you how I build this module. Now, you can take this and use it as an idea for building a module, or actually use it as an idea of how you can insert scenery into your layout. Okay, so basically it's going to be a 2 by 4 foot section, and I will share the screen right now. So here we go. Let's see. Are we seeing that right now?
Yep.
There you go. Right?
Yep.
All right. So what I've done is this is a 2 by 4 foot section, and I've used 1 by 2s along the bottom, and I just made a rectangle, and I just screwed and glued the pieces together. And originally I put a piece of ceiling tile. I take just a regular piece of ceiling tile that comes in 2 by 4 foot sections, and I turn it over and use the back side of it. Well, after I did that, I realized I don't really want to work on a ceiling tile. I use them all the time. It's a great surface for working on, for doing scenery, simply because you can glue it down. White glue will hold it. What I glued that to was a piece of Luan. I forgot to tell you that. I used a piece of Luan plywood over the 1 by 2. 2 by 4 foot section. Then I used the ceiling tile, and ceiling tile is great, like I said, because it's easy. You can dig into it. You can sand it. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. But after I put that on there, I realized, no, I really want to work with foam for this. And so I have these 2-inch pieces of foam thickness. And so I cut out a piece of this pink construction foam, and I decided that this module, you'll see I've got a drawing on here. And now the drawing is going to, it locates the sidewalks and a building. And the building, I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. That's going to be my next kit. And that's what this diorama is for. And of course, we need a siding. Okay. And the siding is going to be up here. Now, this is just a little bit wider than the piece of track that I'm going to use. Okay, so we're going to look at, okay, so here's what I did, is if you're thinking about building something and you know where your track is going to go, which is going to go right on here, and I wanted the track to be up an embankment. And so I had my building, so I outlined the footprint of the building, and I have these sidewalks that are basically 1 inch wide. I make them. I'm gonna actually start selling them. They're 1/8 inch high, and they're made out of it's either going to be MDF or masonite, one of the two. At any rate, I've got some sidewalks that are going to go here, and this is the street, of course, and then I've got another sidewalk on the other side. And so I've kind of laid it all out. And that I used the buildings and other accessories and placed them in and got them arranged the way I wanted. When I was happy, I drew them and stuck them down. And so now we get to creating the landform. Now, what I did, you can see I'm kind of unorthodox here. Not particularly here. I took a piece of foam and I made an embankment. And right here, this building needs coal delivery, or at least one time it needed coal delivery. It probably doesn't use it anymore because the building became something else, which you will see once I get that kit done. I will reveal all. At any rate, this is a coal chute that would go into the building. And of course, if you're going to have a coal chute, you need a hopper car full of coal. And so I've also, and you'll see it, I've also made a little concrete coal bin up here that the car can unload into, and then presumably it slides down here and goes into the basement of the building. And then on each side of this concrete bunker for coal, we have some, and I use these. This is a Woodland Scenics HO scale retaining walls. Looks great, no scale. I have no problem using that no scale. It looks great. They're made out of resin, I believe. And I just stained them, painted them. And the unorthodox thing, it's not really unorthodox. You'll see this is masking tape, okay? And while here I had a nice embankment, over here, I didn't want it to be made out of foam and quite so nice, because I wanted to have another little retaining wall here, just to add visual interest and break it up, so that everything isn't always the same. So what I did here is I left this open, and then I crumbled up some newspaper, shoved the newspaper in there until I got a pretty good form. And then I just take regular masking tape and taped over it. Masking tape? Yeah, well, I discovered this one time. I had to do a photo of an area, and I didn't have time to do a lot of landscaping. And I just took masking tape by itself. I didn't have anything underneath it, and I had to transition 3/4 of an inch down to another flat surface. I was in a hurry. I had to finish the scenery, so I used masking tape. I thought, well, this will be temporary. What I discovered was I painted it with brown latex paint, and then I sprinkled my scenery over it. And then I add a little white glue, like your diluted white glue, and add a little more scenery. I still have that on the basement layout in my house. It's still there, and this was 40 years ago. You can do this with masking tape. You don't need plaster. But anyway, so I used masking tape along here, and then I like to use real rocks for a little bit of more interest. I have a place where I can get some real rocks. It's actually on a railroad siding, and it's the kind of rocks that kind of just flake and chip off, and I just get random pieces, and I bring them home. I've got a couple buckets full of them, and whenever I need a rock, rather than cast a mold, I just use the real thing. Why not? Nothing's going to look better than something that's actually real. All right, so now I'll give you a little closer view of what I did with the tape. I just used several layers of tape until it feels right. okay, until it's stiff enough. And you don't have to be real fancy with this. And as you can see, I let it run down here. I also let it run down here because I figure alongside the retaining wall, wherever it's wherever it's not supported, that ground is going to want to just run down. You're going to get a wash, dirt and stuff. And because we have a structure here and over further, we don't want that here. So they put in a retaining wall to keep stuff from falling down the embankment, gravel, and you don't want your ballast to wash down. So then I also placed the rock in, and now you can see like this newspaper and stuff that I use. It's just paper. Actually, it's not newspaper. It's actually packing paper, but you could use newspaper too. And I just all I did was just shoved it in. You can see where it was shoved through here. And I used that a little bit behind the rocks and then just shoved the rocks up until I got to the foam. And you'll notice along the foam, I also carved the edges so there's a slight slope and nothing is real even. You don't want any hard corners on this stuff here. Well, now you can see what I did. This a little bit further along. I did my first layer of scenery. And so what I did over the tape, there's two things I did. First, I painted it with brown latex paint. It's a flat brown latex paint that I use, and you can see I've used it everywhere. I put that under everything for several reasons. One, it's a good earth color, and two, it seals whatever you're doing. It seals it. And then I took over the tape, I took Sculpt-A-Mold. It's just basically, if you don't know what that is, most people do, but it's a paper mache product, real easy to work with. Mix it with a little water, and I color it as well. I just take a little bit of that brown latex paint and I mix it in with the Sculpt-A-Mold, which or Celluclay, either one of those. They're both about the same. They're kind of gray, but I mix a little bit of brown paint in there and make it brown. And then when that dries, I then come back and paint it again. Pardon me? Somebody say something? All right. Anyway, so I painted everything again once I've got the Sculpt-A-Mold the way I want it. And then you can see I let it come down here too. And I let it come down here. And over on this side, I used some coffee grounds over the Sculpt-A-Mold. I just painted it again, sprinkled on coffee grounds. You can see them right here. And then I added a little bit of base scenery, a little greenery, and a little, just a little bit. I'm always letting something else show through. You don't want anything to be perfectly even. At least nature isn't like that. I mean, nature doesn't usually have one solid color of anything. Now, this is a base layer. I'm going to put weeds and bushes and stuff over here, but I'm not ready to do that yet. Now, what is this? What have I got here? Well, what I've got here is the base for the building. I put the sidewalks in, and I put, this is not the finished street. All I did was I sprayed a dark gray primer down after I painted the foam with the latex paint. Now you can use spray paint on it. You can't spray foam, but because it'll eat it. But if you cover it with a base coat of good latex, flat latex paint, you can spray over it. It's not going to eat the foam. You've created a barrier. So, and then over here, I have put in some, it was a sheet of cobblestone. It was in my toolbox. You can find these in hobby shops. It's actually more like brick rather than cobblestone. like a, well, maybe it's one or the other. I think it's more like a cobblestone actually. And then I just basically covered that with gray. Now this is not finished, obviously. This is underneath, and a bunch of this stuff will be covered up. So what I do to make my streets is I'm going to take Durham's water putty. Another gentleman just spoke about that. I love Durham's water putty. It's great. I will mix that up. It's like plaster. And I mix it up. You mix it with water. You get a fairly nice consistency. I also will put some black, either black wash in there. You can use tempera paint. You can use any kind of liquid or acrylic based paint in there. Mix it up and get yourself a nice gray. And so the next time we come back, I'll show you, I'll have that done. I skim coat this with the Durham's water putty. And then I will allow some of these things to show, not much, but I found, and I actually got this idea from a real industrial area street that's in the West Bottoms here in the Kansas City area, where there were various irregular patches of the formerly cobblestone street covered over with macadam, and it's worn off. And so you got all these little areas. I may cover some up completely. We'll see how it goes, but I've got enough to start with.
Well,
Anyway,
Dennis, I hate to stop you, but that's your time tonight.
Okay. Well, I thought I might have a little extra time since you said you were running late because somebody didn't show up, but I guess they did.
They did, so I got them in, but now I'm
all right.
Hey Dennis, I have a question for you.
Sure.
When are you starting to build that thing you just showed us a minute ago?
This building that I talked about?
Yeah.
Not sure yet. I'm waiting for, it's a new kit. All the parts are being cut as we speak. And I'm waiting for this gentleman to get me the pieces, and then I'll know when the kit will be ready to be reproduced. But I have the kit. I mean, I've already built 2 of the models. I just didn't want to show it quite yet. But you'll know about it.
Okay. Also, my time's almost up because I have to drink my pills soon at 8 o'clock. So I'm gonna leave here for now.
Okay.
But thank you guys for letting me be on the Zoom meeting. And I give you, Jim, I give you my address. Do you see my address?
No, I didn't.
It's in the chat.
Okay, if you could just send me an email with it, that would be great.
Okay, I'll do that too.
Okay.
Bye, guys. Thank you for everything.
I'm sorry this ran over tonight, but thank you so much, Santiago.
Actually, my name's Ethan, not Stan.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, I thought it was Santiago. I'm sorry. Okay, Ethan, thank you.
You're welcome. Good night, everybody. Thank you for being nice to me. Appreciate it. Go Bears or Bulls.
All right.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Dennis, thank you so much for this evening. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You're welcome. We will get to ballasting. I'm going to do what? I think 2 more of these, right?
Yep.
So we'll get to the ballasting on the last one, but I want to get to show how we got there. I think that's important. So if anybody has any questions, just email me. All right. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Dennis. Well, now I want to turn to Santiago. Santiago was on the show last week and talked about art and our modeling, and he's back this week. And Santiago, welcome.
Happy to be back, Jim. How are you? All right, let me share my screen here. . Tonight I'm going to speak about the appreciation of miniatures. That's where I left off last week. And let me just say that the appreciation of miniatures is by extension related to the appreciation of scale models. The first idea that I'd like to introduce today is the following. Last June, I had the chance to visit the Illinois Railway Museum in Chicago. And the very first reason for me to visit that museum was to meet, of course, 9911, CB&Q's E5 Phase 1 magnificent locomotive, my favorite diesel engine ever. And if you've ever had the chance to confront real prototypes or prototypes of the models of the models that we have, something in the looking at them becomes very, very different. Whenever we're confronted with these locomotives, presumably the ones we model, you realize or you're reminded of their sheer size, the sense of weight, the sense of mass, but more than anything, their size. And you could ask yourself, are they really that big? I mean, compared to a building or to a mountain. And compared to those things, they're certainly not that big, but they seem massive to us. And the reason they seem massive to us is because we gauge our relationship to the prototypes and by extension to our models with our own bodies. And that's an important idea. We relate to both prototypes and miniatures with our own bodies. It's not for nothing that when people want to show, for instance, a small part that they built for a prototype or a model, they very often take a photograph of the thing on the palm of their hand. In a way, the palm of our hand is the measure of the miniature. That comes up very often in social media and in our forums, wherever we share contents about scale models. People put things on the palm of their hands, and they share that picture. The palm of the hand is, of course, the gauge of the miniature. But look, the idea is the following. These things are so big compared to our bodies that looking at them is very difficult, very difficult. You can look, for instance, at the face of the beautiful E5 that we have here. That's me in the picture. Sorry for the shameless plug. But look, you can look at some details, you can appreciate their beauty, you get a sense of the history when you're looking at the prototype, and that's wonderful. But if you want to say, for instance, look at the rear end of the locomotive or some part in the back, for God's sake, you have to walk all the way back to look at whatever you're interested in. And that takes a while. It's very cumbersome. These things are big. And so it's very difficult to get a full picture of the prototype whenever you're in their presence. By contrast, with miniatures, you have something very powerful. You look at a miniature, and what you're looking at is something that is as close as we can to looking at the full thing, at the thing in its completeness. In visual language, that's what we call a gestalt, looking at something not by the sum of their parts, but looking at them as a whole. I've here on my hands a PSC 50-foot automobile boxcar that is waiting for T-section Rich Yoder truck so I can model it in Southern Pacific. But look, I'm handling it and I can flip it around and see every little detail on it. And I get a sense that is not a full sense because there's no such thing as a full vision of something. Vision is always mediated or contaminated. But the important idea is that you get a sense of the whole thing by looking at it when you're looking at a miniature. That's perhaps one of the most important aspects of miniatures. Last week I finished with this picture, this slide, I'm sorry. And I wanted to meet you halfway where we could see if miniatures could reach the level of art. I'm going to talk about two examples. One is this one, which is Narcissa Thorne's miniature rooms, which you can find the largest collection of them. You can find in no other than the Art Institute of Chicago. They have something like 62 or 63 of her miniature rooms. I'm not going to talk about her because, to be honest, I don't know much about the person. I know she came from money. She was very, very well off. And she was a very courageous woman in the sense that she pursued this enterprise of working with craftsmen so that she could build these miniature rooms, which ended up in very important museums. Like I just said, the biggest collection, the Art Institute of Chicago. Why are they so interesting? Look, we're looking really at dioramas. They're called miniature rooms, and they're 1/12 scale, and they are absolutely wonderfully crafted. I mean, there's no question about it. These things are nice. They're beautiful. And a lot of things have been said about them that are very interesting. There's some scholarly work done on them. You can find articles online about them. But I would say that, look, these pictures, even though they seem very easily accessed and immediate to the eye, and there's no much thinking about them, they're beautiful, they're engaging, they're attracting, very attractive. They're very considered. Clearly, Narcissa Thorne was a woman with a very educated eye. And these miniatures have something in them that make them quite special. They have, for instance, a beautiful sense of continuity, in the sense that the eye can wander throughout the space, moving from part to part, from figure to figure, from area to area, without falling into any sort of sense of disbelief. They really have a degree of illusion that is wonderful. And let's not forget that the idea of continuity. That's a property that is almost always assigned to surfaces. And a surface, like I was saying in my first segment, is a property that, or a characteristic that is better related to painting than to sculpture. And of course, since these are dioramas, they are frames, so you're looking into something, as you do with a painting. The sense of continuity is beautiful, but they're also complex in the sense that you get a lot, for instance, when it comes to the idea of surface perception and the idea of contour perception. Look, they're very well done. The surface of some objects, even though they may be within the same category, like pots, they may be different. Some are dented, some are shinier, some are, you get a sense of a real history of the object being behind. That's one thing. The other thing is that even though they're called miniature rooms, they don't read as miniatures. And that's fascinating. That's fascinating because you go to the permanently displayed room in the Art Institute of Chicago, you stand before the thing, and you feel like you could go into the space. You project yourself in the space, and you don't feel like you're looking at a miniature. So there's a beautiful ambiguity with a very complex perceptual idea behind it that I think makes for a very interesting image to sort of study. Attached to that idea, there's another wonderful idea that I think we can all relate to when we look at our own scale models. And that is the idea of the viewer moving between worlds. As a viewer of scale models and miniatures, we do that often. We're on this side on the layout, but at the same time, we're on that side on the layout. We're on the layout, we're in the layout. And we project ourselves into these spaces back and forth as we engage with them. That's a very interesting and sophisticated idea. Miniatures do that. Painting does that to some degree. But here, the idea becomes ever more evident. And that's something. Let's look at another example. I mean, you can find her work online. There's a lot of pieces written about her, and the examples of her miniature of these diorama boxes, you can find them quite easily. Something about the miniatures that also comes up with her work is this idea of an enchantment. Enchantment is a word that comes up in the literature of miniature mechanized artifacts. There's a very interesting idea about, for instance, mechanical watches. And there's a red line between mechanical watches and our trains too, but that again requires more time for it developed. but the idea of something enchanting, meaning that it attracts you to the degree where you lose yourself in it. That also happens with the work of Narcissa Thorne, and it of course happens with some of the most detailed and well-crafted scale models that we so love. So that idea of enchantment is also, from the human standpoint, very important when we engage and appreciate miniatures and scale models. Let me go back for a second. Let me talk about this one just a little bit more, because there's an idea in her work that I find fascinating. And when I read about this, I thought, yes, that's exactly what we do when we look at a scale model. Since we actually peek into these beautiful dioramas and beautifully crafted images, depictions, we engage in a kind of vision that has to do with the daydream. And that idea of daydreaming is, of course, something that we do with our scale models too. We're looking at something that it's not there. That idea of daydreaming is also attached to a form of vision that has to do with a metaphor that in a way comes from the sciences, but I think it has a lot of human aspects to it. Certainly a childhood aspect to it. And that's the metaphor of looking through a microscope. Whenever we engage with a scale model or a miniature, we're looking at it as if we were looking through a microscope. That metaphor, I think, resonates with everyone. And I read about that and I said, yeah, that's exactly what we do. We find a world within a world. That's our layouts right there. And if you look, for instance, at cab interiors or the interiors of a beautifully detailed passenger car, nowadays, for instance, brass steam engines have the most detailed cab interiors. The instrument panels light up. The seats are perfectly rendered. The cords, every valve is there, beautifully depicted. You peek into one of these cab interiors, and you're looking at a world within a world within a world, amplifying the importance of the metaphor that I was just speaking of. So again, from the human side, the engaging of miniatures has to do with the idea of daydreaming, and wonder. And I think everyone relates to that or recognizes that as true. When it comes to her work, really quickly, they're not simply historical depictions. They're not really historical representations. There was actually a lot of play between what was historical and what was kind of a whimsy. But what's interesting is that the work herself falls more within this idea of fantasy and the dollhouse than to a simple historical depiction of an interior room. Yes, there's interest, for instance, coming from architectural history and design history, but there's something about them that make them something more of a simple architectural and historical depiction. They really are dreamy and interesting. And of course, when it comes to people going to the museum, the museum has no embarrassment in conveying that there are some of the most visited rooms in the entire collection. Now, let's look at another miniature artist, so to speak, that I think a lot of people here recognize. His name is Michael Paul Smith. Michael Paul Smith became very famous for making photographs of his work with miniatures, depicting a kind of fantasy American town called Elgin Park. And he had a Flickr account. He passed away a few years ago, but he was a wonderfully clever artist and miniaturist. And his work, I would describe as a very clever and sophisticated exercise in forced perspective. What you're seeing here is a kind of a table or a base where he would lay miniature cars. I think they're 120, 135, if I'm not mistaken. And he was very clever and educated when it came to laying a base where he would model miniature cars and sometimes trains too. But he would place them in such a way that from the point of view of the camera, there would be a beautiful continuity between the depiction and the real world. And of course, as you can see from the pictures, but the previous one was he making a joke on his Flickr account. Clearly, that's not the work. He was just sharing a post with a lot of humor in it. But here, this is one of his works. Let's remember that miniatures are not simply the three-dimensional ones. They can come in the form of books, and they can come in the form of painting. But in his case, the work is actually photography. He worked with miniatures, and work was photography.
Santiago, I hate to do this, but your time is up.
All right. Can I have 5 minutes?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm going to go really fast. I'll just speak about this one really quickly. Look, in this one, he was doing something remarkably clever. He was using the edge of the base that I was speaking about as a kind of mechanism for forgetting. So in a way, he's using the abyss between the base and the real world as a connecting feature where you would forget that the thing being depicted and the real world were two different things. That was, of course, a different view from the first one. I don't think I'll get to speak about this one because there's not enough time. But I just wanted to show a photograph of one of my O-scale models. There's just no time, so I'll leave it at that. I wanted to finish with a sculpture by an artist called Charles Ray. I'm perfectly aware that I challenged the idea of these things being sculptures. But this work, I think, was a very interesting way to finish that conversation of a work that is full size. I mean, it's the size of a truck, but the depiction is clearly the depiction of a toy. I'm not going to say anything about it because I think people can draw their own conclusions. But in a way, it tells you how far away we are when it comes to the problem of scale models and contemporary art. And that has to do, for instance, with the notion of what's a problem in both disciplines. In our case, the problem is sort of given. You have to model this car in this time frame with these colors and these decals, and you can put in this or that terrain. When it comes to a problem in contemporary art, that changes between artists. It's not a fixed problem. And oftentimes artists have a hard time verbalizing what is it that they're interested in. But I thought that this was a thought-provoking example to bring to everyone's attention. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Jim.
Santiago, I love what you're talking about. I love the examples that you're giving. And you're most welcome to come back and continue this if you'd like to. I'm sorry that I have to call time tonight, but I thank you so very much for doing this for us.
Happy to do it. I'll finish next week with a quick conversation of scale models from the sciences, engineering in particular. Thank you.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Santiago. All right, now I want to turn to Martin Breckbiel for his Scratch Building Corner. Martin Breckbiel, MMR.
Oh, gosh. Initials after my name. Let me find where I'm at here. Well, this looks possible. And I think it is possible, in fact. Take off my glasses so I can actually see what I'm doing. I'm sorry I'm a little slow tonight. I've been up since 4 a.m. and I don't know what time it is now, but it's too many hours without sleep. I'm a little drained. So we finished last week. So this week, I guess, we'll start something new. I don't know what new necessarily means because we're building models of things that are generally not actually new, usually a little dated. And in my case, and myself, quite a bit dated. So months ago, I used this slide and I had extra blank flat car frames without underbodies, train lines installed. They're ready to be used. So guess what? We're going to use one. Probably use 2 or 3 of them in the next couple of weeks if we're not careful. And if I get some sleep, I'll probably use at least 3 of them. So we're going to start with this stuff. These are US Hobbies parts. Pick these up off a table at train show, Strasbourg. We've got, it says coupler pockets. Those are not coupler pockets. There's no doubt about that. Those are 2 pair of tank car ends, it says at the other end of the package. And over in a Ziploc bag are more parts for a tank car. There's a dome, and I think it's actually something to say. Somewhat harder to do sometimes, particularly when you only have 2 hands and you have a piece of brass, 2 ends, and a thumb screw to turn, and you only have 2 hands. This is where on-the-spot mutation may be useful. So we're going to need some other things. Some solder. I use some of this solder. I have 3 or 4 different types of rosin core solder. I grab whatever I feel like at the time. This was a little heavier brass, so it's this larger solder. I use a Ruby Flux liquid. My machinist gave this to me, several good-sized bottles of it. Gave it to me at least 15 years ago, and I decant out a little bit into a small vial that has a compression seal at the top, so it keeps the air out and doesn't spill unless you are clumsy like I am occasionally, and it goes flying across your bench top and spills everywhere, and then you have to start over. A small little torch. Some people like irons. I like a torch. Depends what I'm doing. If it's electrical stuff, it's the soldering iron. Everything else I can use the torch on. I reach for the torch first. These are 15, 20 bucks. They're cheap. They're almost disposable because they will break eventually. Okay, so we'll fast forward. Now we got a tube. We got a tank. The brass is rolled up. The ends are soldered in, and it's a lot more complicated than that. If I had Gandalf's magic staff, I could say, oh, it was just magic. In this case, it's kind of tedious. Rolling brass, I don't have a roller, so I did this by hand. You take the brass sheet. First of all, you got to cut it to the circumference of the ends. So a little mathematics and a calculator, and you know how big a piece of brass you need. Rolling it up is more annoying than you might think. I started with a piece of plumbing pipe. Good sized piece, actually, much larger than this. And you work your way down to a smaller and smaller and smaller dowel, wood dowel, until it's actually using a piece of dowel that's smaller than this tank, just to make sure you've got enough of a curl in it that it'll stay where you put it. The hard part is getting the last ½ an inch of the brass to curl up. So you have to really work that last little bit around that dowel and bend it to make sure. The middle 80% of the sheet of brass is easy to roll up. It's the other 10% sections which are a little troublesome. But once you have it in place, hose clamps, slide the brass ends in, flux, torch, hopefully no singeing of the fingers or, in my case, the beard or mustache or eyebrows, as the case might be if you get a little too close. And, you know, with my sloppy soldering, that's about as good as it gets for me. And if I get a little too much solder, well, that's what files are for. Or the belt sander in extreme cases. And we take those other parts, and there's 1, 2, 3, 5 parts there from US Hobbies. The most annoying part of this is getting that center part of the dome situated in the round part evenly around. There's not a lot of space there. Could have glued it. I could have epoxied it. I soldered it anyhow. I figured I'm going to do soldering work on this project. I might as well just do it everywhere I can. So that gets soldered on there. The 2 vents drop in, they get soldered. The hatch is actually fairly thick brass. It's about 40 thousandths thick. Priming that with a little bit of solder underneath of it, and then heating it up just enough to get it to nestle down on there, and stopping is the fastest way to get that done without making a mess of everything. And then a little bit of flux around the collar, and a much smaller piece of solder, thinner. Just touch that with the soldering, the torch, and wrap it around. Bang, it's on. It's not coming off. So that gets us our tank. We've got a flat car body. We have a tank. It's not a very long tank, which is good because it leaves room on the car body for other things. Other things being, I'm not quite sure. We'll have to get it onto the tank. We got to get the car prepped a little bit first. So I'm going to skip the underbody, all the underbody and brake stuff. We've been there, done that a multitude of times now. It's on the YouTube videos somewhere, and if you need to see it again, contact me and I'll walk you through it, or send you my slides or something like that. But it's not hard to do, to put a K-brake system in and put the truss rod system in. So we're just going to skip through that because it's routine now. But we got more car than we have tank, so we need something else for the car. So we're going to make some sides. This is 3x stock. I don't remember if it's 3x10 or 8 or 12. For all I know, it's 3x9. It's probably some odd number that I just happened to get from Kapler. It's pine, not basswood as well. So we'll just glue this up. These are all 3x4s. The 3-inch section is what's up or down, as the case may be, glued to the sides. 3x4 fits the Grant Line stake pocket. Hence the reason for using 3x4s. You could use 4x4s, but you're going to have to shave them off to make them fit inside those pockets. So, being lazy, I start with the piece of wood that actually fits in the pockets. So we have two sides, two ends. And it goes together something like that. I just glue it directly onto the side sill, drop the stake pockets over it with some CA, and being foolish, I had to do this backwards, and I had to take the whole car and put it under the drill press and drill all those holes for the nut bolt washer castings, but okay, so what? Just drop the table down a little bit and bang out a lot of holes real quick. These are just number 23 Grant Line nut bolt washer castings. Put them on the inside, on the outside. The different colored ones are different production era. There's some really old ones. I think I've finally used up the really old black and gray ones. Now it's this new version, which are kind of I don't know what to call it, what color to call it. Beige, gray, nondescript color that's not found in nature. So lots of holes here, and the cradle for holding the tank. So the tank just can't flop there on the wood; it's going to roll off. So it's got to sit down inside something. So we need a cradle, and that's what the cradle looks like for dropping the tank into. Roughly centered on the car. Roughly the length of the brass sides, but the ends are dome shaped. They need to be accommodated, and so you need to relieve some space here on the ends, and start off with carving that out a little bit with with a scalpel blade. I got bored with that after a while and just took the Dremel with the drum sander on it and just sanded it out and made a mess all over the front of my shirt and probably into my sinuses as well. Probably shouldn't want to inhale too much basswood if you can help it. But just grind this out until it drops in perfectly. Stop there. Glue it all down, drill some more holes, drop in some more nut bolt and washer casting. These are the large ones from Tishi. Now we have a cradle for the tank. And I'm done for the night. It's nap time. Unless there's a screaming question or two.
Anybody have any questions for Martin? Great job, Martin. That's going to be a beautiful car when it's finished. Look forward to seeing you next week.
We might be done with that one, and then I'll do the next one, I guess.
Sounds like a winner to me. Take care.
All right.
Well, for the last time, I want to go to Steve Sherrill tonight. Steve said that because the show was running a little long, maybe we ought to stop it and just eliminate him. But I think Steve's comments are important. And I really enjoy his what do you want to talk about segments. So I've asked him not to cancel tonight. And Steve, I appreciate you staying around. So what do you want to talk about?
Well, I just came from the other side of town when I was with Steve Bittinger. I want to talk about train shows. This last weekend, there was the largest train show probably in the country, where there was over 20,000 people the first day. I did not go to the train show, but I did watch a lot of videos on the train show. Now, I noticed some things that were very good, and I was very happy to see a lot of younger people at the train show participating, operating layouts behind manufacturers' tables, walking around buying stuff. To me, it was very exciting to see that. And I think we discussed at an earlier date the problems with, it seems like the hobby is dying out somewhat. But I didn't see it at Springfield. Now, anybody who was there may correct me, but what I saw on the videos was certainly encouraging. I saw a lot of good things. Now, I want to mention that Greg Cassidy and I will be at the Timonium show this weekend, manning the New Tracks modeling table for the scholarships. And I would really like to see people who are on YouTube viewing the show to come by and say hi to us so we could see who you are and just talk, model railroading for a while. We don't get to share that much personally one-on-one, except at things like this event. And one other thing, I looked on a video, and here was a guy in Oklahoma City. They had a big train show for them. And the guy he covered it where he broke down the total tables into scales. He had 350 tables, 41 were Garden Railroad, 140 were HO, and went down like that. And I was just wondering if there are certain areas in this country where certain scales are dominant. I know that statistically HO and N are way more popular than Garden Railroading or ON30 and SN3 and S. So I just wondered if anybody has any experience for like in Chicago area where they might have the L may have a big influence on the modeling there. To me, it's a lot of my friends, we stayed in HO, and then when one of us went to a different scale, the other ones came along. And I just wondered if there was some influences like that, in your groups. Right now, I'm going to try something different on my own railroad, where I'm going to take out about 25% of it and rebuild it again. And when I do this, there's a whole lot of confusion that goes on. Some upset, because anytime you have a change, you always make a mistake, or you reevaluate what you thought was going to work and it doesn't work, this kind of thing. So I guess this is just what happens when you know, have years and years of experience in the hobby. And I would certainly encourage any new person to realize that even the old people have made a lot of mistakes, and don't worry about making yours. So again, come to the New Tracks modeling table at Timonium. I know Greg and I would love to talk to you. And I'll be there on Sunday, and Greg will be manning it on Saturday. I'll have my micro there on Sunday. If you want to operate a battery control, you can certainly operate my little railroad as much as you want. That's all I have.
Well, I want you and Greg particularly to take some photos. I mean, so we can see next week really what went on at the show.
Well, I'm willing. I'll even do autographs.
I've got a little bit of room left on my camera phone.
Anybody have any comments to Steve?
Did anybody go to Springfield? No. Okay.
Oh,
yeah, I was at Springfield.
What did you think?
Was a great show. I mean, I tried walking around a bit on Saturday, and it was like halftime at the Dome here in Syracuse in a basketball game. You had to fight your way through the crowd. It wasn't as bad on Saturday. I spent a lot of time at the NMRA booth there, which we had in the Better Living Center. But there are 4 buildings there. There's a lot to be seen, a lot of manufacturers, and a lot of stuff for sale. To your point about location and scale, I think location has more to do with what railroads people model and things than it does with scale. I think scale is a matter of how much space people have and what appeals to them. But I thought the Springfield show was great. I didn't see anything. Unfortunately, we didn't have anything about the scholarship for the New Tracks modeling there. Maybe that's something we got to work on.
Yeah, no, we had it there. It was.
Did you?
Yeah, Bernie had it at his booth. We had the banner there and handouts and so forth. And from what he said, a lot of people came by and commented.
Okay. Well, I must have walked right by it then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. It was because I mean, and maybe it was when I was going around Saturday. It was hard to see what was on the tables because so many people. There were between 15 and 16,000 people there on Saturday.
Did you notice
7,000 or 8,000 on Sunday?
Did you notice what I said about younger people?
Yeah, there are a lot of young folks around. A lot of young people around. Saturday tends to be the modelers. So you get the guy who's waiting at the door because he knows X, Y, and Z guy has got the brass model that he wants, and he's got to be the first one there to get it. Sunday tends to be more families, parents with kids walking around looking at trains and stuff, which is good to see.
Did you like the layouts? Did you see any one particular one that set?
Oh, there's some beautiful layouts. I'm always partial to the Central New York Modelers layout, which has beautiful modeling. But the other one that impressed me was the Reading Historical Society has a layout they have there. It was very, very well done. Sometimes when you have modular layout, there's real good modules and then some that aren't so much. But every one of those was just really well done and very well planned.
Now, in the videos, I saw a lot of O scale.
There's a lot of most of the O scale is Lionel, and a lot of what you get is unfortunately is, junior or daughter or grandchildren or somebody selling dad's or grandpa's trains, that he didn't make any provision for. So there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
But there is there was some O scale there. There's some G scale too, some large scale folks there too.
Yeah, it's just overwhelming. I've never been there. It's on my bucket list, but
if you haven't been, it's an experience. They got four buildings and stuff. It's huge. There's all kinds of people there. If you want something and you can't find it there, it probably doesn't exist.
Yeah. I've been to York.
I did, engage in some commerce. I bought some tools and a few things that I was looking for. I needed a Markland transformer for my grandson because he wants a train to go under the Christmas tree, and the one they had died. So I'm going to give him some of the Markland trains that I have, but I needed another transformer. I got one for $10. I'm going to send it off to the guy in Virginia that repairs them and get him put a cord on it. And there we are.
Yeah. Great. Well, anyway, that's it for tonight for me.
Well, Steve, I appreciate you sticking around. And let me apologize to everybody. I'm sorry the show ran a little long. And I apologize to the presenters that I had to, in effect, cut off at times. It's only one person to blame, and it's me. So I apologize to everybody for the show going long. But Steve, I appreciate you sticking around, because I think your segment about what you want to talk about, I think that's important. And I know that a lot of people look forward to it. So thanks so much for sticking around and doing that.
No problem.
Before we close the show tonight, we want to do our caboose as normal. So Phil, if you could run that, then we'll close this show down. I told Pat Rivard earlier, this reminded me of Canada. I'm not sure why.
Start shivering, Jim.
I've been doing that all day.
Yeah, it looks like my front yard.
Well, thanks again for coming tonight. I'm sorry the show ran a little long, but I appreciate you staying. I hope you enjoyed it. Most importantly, I hope you